normally I would say, well, the CEO confidence is a good sign that hiring will continue. But I'm listening to what just came out of Washington, what Elon Moy told us about various corporate tax proposals to pay for the budget, and wondering, will this confidence last?
Yeah, Kelly, it's a good question because, in this survey, it was done prior to the Delta surge here. So it was done back in July. And it was focused on the next 3 years. So I think CEOs are looking at this thing. They were a little bit more bullish. If they did it today, I'm sure that the CEOs would be less bullish. But if you're looking at a 3-year timeline, I think CEOs are thinking that things will get back somewhat to normal, and they're somewhat bullish on that. The Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index was terrible. I mean, it was a 6-month low, but it was diving future expectations. And that's really a measure of the here and now, what consumers are experiencing. And that was driven almost entirely by the resurgence of the COVID virus and the concern that jobs will cut back. And so you saw in the jobs report today exactly that happening with especially the service industries now cutting back or at least plateauing in job creation. So I think everybody's sort of coalescing here and putting the brakes on. I think the headline, Kelly, is COVID lives, jobs die.
Wow. Which is unfortunate, 18 months into this, when we were hoping we were starting to get back to normal much more quickly. So how do you think, I don't know which of these is going to be enacted and to what degree, but we have now proposals to raise the corporate tax rate, to possibly have a stock buyback excise tax, to have a tax on excess corporate CEO, among other items here, Steve, to pay for the $3.5 trillion budget. Tell me what you think the important numbers are to watch there. I mean, we know a lot of this is posturing. We've seen a lot of these proposals for years and years and years. What's the biggest one on your agenda?
Well, $3.5 trillion is incredible. I mean, that's almost as much as the entire budget for the United States. And we're running $1 trillion deficit on that natural budget. So this would be all 100% debt. You can raise the corporate rate, but you're not going to raise more money. We've proven that over and over and over again. To the extent that corporations do have to pay higher taxes through, and they're not able to restructure, it'll get passed through to the consumer in terms of pricing. So all of this lands on the economy one way or another and diminishes the growth. And then you have to worry about what happens here to inflation and the value of the dollar as you continue to put more and more trillions of debt on there. At some point, the dollar doesn't become an attractive reserve currency and you start slipping into higher and higher inflation. And that's why when you look at today's inflation, you don't know how much of it is strictly, an imbalance between supply and demand and people starting to get nervous that the debt levels are really getting too high.
Yeah, no, it's always something that's floating around out there. I guess the last thing that I would ask is about Delta itself. I mean, do you pick up on anything in the high-frequency data that would suggest that companies are somewhat akin to the stock market in the way they're reacting here? I mean, a moment ago we said, Delta spreads, hiring stops, but hopefully maybe people say it's peaking. The stock market is obviously looking past it. Could that be the case with corporate America or no?
Well, part of this depends on the employees, right? And so the Conference Board just did a return to work survey, and 42% of the people say they don't want to go back to work. Wow. I mean, they're really worried, and that's double what it was just a couple of months ago. So Delta is impacting this, and that's particularly the case with women and millennials. And we've got more than a third of people who are surveyed saying they're looking to leave their organizations, especially those organizations that require in-office work, and especially those organizations that require vaccination. So you've got a lot of different things pulling here. So if companies can't get the labor they need, if they can't get back to normal, if the travel industry doesn't get back to normal, you're going to see the brakes put on again. And, these things don't happen, just ratably where, it smooths out. You can get a really fast stop to this thing. And then, it takes a jump start to get going again. So that's what we're worried about here. It was all looking pretty good, but, Delta has thrown a big monkey wrench into the works.